My only daughter pushed me down a flight of stone steps in Lisbon and left me bleeding on a cobblestone street in a country where I didn't speak the language. She did it so she could come home and take the vineyard my grandfather built with his own 2 hands. But 2 months later, when she walked through the wrought iron gate of that vineyard expecting to claim her prize, I was already standing under the old oak tree, holding a glass of our own wine, and I smiled and said, "Welcome home, sweetheart. I've been waiting for you." What happened next ended her life as she knew it. Before I tell you the rest, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what state or country you're watching from. It helps more than you'd ever guess. I want to start with the morning of the fall, because every detail matters. We were 3 days into a 10-day trip. Lisbon, in late April, the kind of weather where the sun makes the yellow buildings look like they've been dipped in honey. My daughter had organized the whole thing. A 60-second birthday gift, she called it. 6 months late, but better than nothing. She booked the flights, the hotel, up near the Alfama district, even the dinner reservations. I remember telling my neighbor before we left that I felt lucky, that after her mother died 4 years ago, I'd worried we'd drift apart. And here she was, planning a trip just for the 2 of us. Her husband was supposed to come too. He canceled the week before. Said something came up at the firm. I didn't think much of it at the time. Now I think about it every single day. The hotel had a narrow staircase made of those old polished tiles, the blue and white kind they call azulejos. Beautiful but slick when wet. The morning of the 4th day, my daughter brought me a coffee in my room before breakfast. She was already dressed. Linen pants, a cream blouse, her hair pulled back. She looked just like her mother. I told her so. She didn't smile. "Dad, you should come down to breakfast before the rush." I told her I'd be down in 10 minutes. I was still in my robe, fumbling with my reading glasses, looking for my pills. "There's something I want to show you on the terrace first. Just come now. Please." There was something in her voice. A flatness. I should have felt it then. I followed her out into the corridor in my robe and slippers. The hallway carpet was damp. A maid had been mopping. There was a small yellow sign at the top of the stairs, the kind with the stick figure slipping. My daughter walked ahead of me. I remember she paused at the top of the staircase and turned. She looked at me for what felt like a long time. "Watch your step, Dad." Then her hand came up and caught me right between the shoulder blades. It wasn't a hard shove. It was a steady push, the kind a person makes when they want to be sure of the result, without seeming violent. If anyone were watching, my slipper caught on the lip of the first stair, and after that everything was sound and color and the iron taste of blood. 22 stone steps. My right shoulder hit first, then my hip, then my head. I want you to understand something. In the half-second before I lost consciousness, I looked up. She was standing at the top of the stairs with her hand still extended, and there was nothing on her face. Not horror, not panic, not even shock. Just a kind of waiting, like a person watching the last few seconds of a microwave countdown. Then everything went black. I woke up 2 days later in the hospital de São José with a cracked skull, 3 broken ribs, a fractured hip, and tubes in places I don't want to describe. A nurse named Senhora Madalena was the first person I saw. She had gray hair pulled into a tight bun and the kindest eyes I've ever seen. She spoke a little English. She told me my daughter had flown back to America the day before. Emergency, she said. Family matter. The hotel staff had told the ambulance I'd slipped on the wet stairs. My daughter had paid 2 days of medical fees and left a note saying she'd return when I was stable enough to travel. The note was on the side table. I asked Madalena to read it to me. My eyes wouldn't focus. "Dad, I'm sorry I have to leave. Something terrible has happened at home. Please rest. The hotel will help you with anything. I'll come back for you as soon as I can. I love you. I love you." Those were the words my daughter wrote after she stood at the top of a staircase and watched me fall. I'll never get those 3 words back. They're ruined for me now. Every time someone says them, I hear her voice in that hallway saying, Watch your step. For 3 days, I couldn't move my left arm. I couldn't remember the names of streets in my own town. The doctor told me through the translator that I'd suffered a moderate traumatic brain injury, and I needed to stay at least 10 days. My daughter had left her American number with the front desk. The hospital tried it twice. It went to voicemail both times. The voicemail said the inbox was full. I lay in that bed and I tried to convince myself it had been an accident, that her hand on my back had been a memory, my injured brain had stitched together wrong. I worked at it hard. I'm a man who likes to think well of his children. I built my whole life around her. After her mother passed, she was all I had. But on day 5, a woman came to visit me. She wasn't a nurse. She was a maid from the hotel. Her name was Beatrice. She was maybe 70 years old, small, with strong forearms and a black cardigan she wore. Even though the room was warm, she had been the one mopping the corridor that morning. The hotel had given her my room number from the incident report. Beatrice couldn't speak much English, but she'd brought a friend, a young man named Tomas, who was studying engineering at the university. He translated. "She wants to tell you something, sir. She says she was at the end of the corridor when you fell. She saw your daughter. She doesn't believe what the report says." I asked her what she saw. Tomas listened to her for a long moment. The old woman's eyes were filling up. "She says your daughter pushed you. She says she saw the hand. She wanted to come to you sooner, but the manager told her not to make trouble. She says her own son is an alcoholic who has hit her many times, and she knows the look of a person doing something on purpose. She says she's sorry. She prayed for you." I asked her if she would say this to the police. Tomas translated again. The old woman nodded slowly. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket and took out something wrapped in a tissue. It was my watch. The Hamilton my father gave me when I graduated college. She said she'd found it on the second landing after my daughter and the paramedics had left the hotel. She didn't know whether to give it to me or to the manager, so she'd kept it safe. I held that watch and I cried in front of those two strangers like I haven't cried since my wife died. That afternoon I started making my plan. You have to understand something about me. I spent 38 years running a small construction company in the Pacific Northwest. I built my own crews. I read my own contracts. I am a slow man, a careful man, and a patient one, the kind of man who will spend an hour studying a subfloor before he'll lay a single tile. When my wife was sick, I read every research paper I could find on her cancer. I am not a man who acts on heat. I act on cold, and lying in that hospital bed in Lisbon with a cracked skull, I went cold all the way through. Why would my daughter try to kill me? The answer was already there if I let myself look at it. 2 months earlier, on a Sunday afternoon at my house, she'd brought a stack of papers. She'd told me they were updates to my healthcare directive and the trust restructure her husband's tax attorney had recommended. She said it would save thousands when I eventually passed. Routine, she said. Boilerplate, she said. Just sign here and here and here. Her husband sat at my kitchen table and made small talk about the Mariners while I signed. I didn't read a word. I'm 62 years old. I'm not stupid. I'm not even forgetful. But I trusted my daughter the way you trust the floor, not to fall out from under you. You don't check it every time you stand up. I didn't have a copy of what I had signed. She'd taken everything with her. Said she'd file it with her records, the Vineyard. That was what this was about. My grandfather bought 30 acres of rolling country land in Oregon's Willamette Valley. In 1948, he cleared it himself. He planted his first Pinot vines in 1962, before the rest of the world knew Oregon could grow wine. My father expanded it to 50 acres. I added the tasting room and the small production facility in 1998. The vineyard was worth somewhere between $4 and $5 million now, depending on the harvest year. But money isn't why my daughter wanted it. Her husband was drowning. I didn't know the half of it then, lying in that hospital. I would learn it all later, but I knew that he'd been pushing for 2 years for me to bring him into the business. I knew he'd been showing up to family dinners with watches that cost more than most people's cars. I knew his eyes never quite settled on mine when we talked, and I knew something else. Something I'd been pretending not to know. My daughter had changed. The girl I raised had been replaced over the last 3 years by someone who measured every conversation, who flinched whenever I mentioned her brother, my son, who had died of an overdose at 26 and left a hole in our family that never closed, who stopped bringing my granddaughter, a 5-year-old named Rennie, to visit me, who stopped calling, who only showed up when there was something to discuss. I lay there and I made my list. I could feel my brain working again, slowly, like an engine turning over on a cold morning. 1. Get out of this country alive. 2. Find out exactly what I'd signed. 3. Get to the Vineyard before she could establish residence there. 4. Make her face what she did, in daylight, with evidence, not revenge. I want to be clear about that. The word that lived in my chest was older and harder than revenge. It was accountability. There is no version of life worth living where a man's daughter can push him down a staircase and walk into his home and pour herself a drink and feel nothing about it. That world cannot exist. Not on my watch. Not while I still draw breath. The American consulate in Lisbon sent a woman named Annalise to see me on day 6. She was tall and thin with red hair pulled into a braid. She was in her late 30s. She was the first American I'd spoken to in almost a week. I cried again, just hearing the accent. I told her everything. I didn't soften a single word. I told her I believed my daughter had pushed me. I told her about the documents I'd signed 2 months earlier. I told her about Beatrice and the watch. Annalise didn't say anything for a long time. She just took notes. Sir, I have to ask, do you want me to file an attempted homicide report with the Lisbon police? I thought about it for a long time. Not yet. She looked up. Why not? I told her. Because if I file it now, my daughter gets word from the consulate within 48 hours. She'll know I'm onto her. She'll move money. She'll move my granddaughter. She'll burn whatever paperwork is in my study. By the time I get home, there will be nothing left but a clean scene and her lawyer's number. I want her to think I'm dying. I want her to think I'm confused. I want to walk into my own house and watch her face change. Annalise sat there a moment. Then she did something I'll never forget. She closed her notebook. My grandmother lived with us when I was a kid. Her son, my uncle, took her to the bank one day and emptied her accounts. We didn't know until she died. I always wished she'd had time to know what he did and to choose what to do about it. She helped me get an emergency passport. She helped me get my flight upgraded so I could lay flat with my hip brace. She gave me the name of an elder fraud attorney in Portland who had helped a friend of hers. Most of all, she helped me draft a single email I sent to my daughter from the hospital's computer kiosk 2 days before I was discharged. The email said only this, honey. I'm so confused about everything. The doctors say my memory may not come back fully. They want me to stay here longer. Please tell Rennie her grandpa loves her. I'm going to need a lot of help when I get home. I don't know how I'll manage the vineyard. I love you. Dad. She wrote back within 3 hours. Dad, please don't worry about anything. I'll handle everything. Just rest and come home when you can. We love you so much. We love you so much. Her and her husband and the future they were building on the bones of my life. I flew home 12 days after the fall, coach, with a cane and a lumbar brace and bruises that had turned the color of an old peach. I'd told her on the phone the night before that my flight got in Thursday at noon. It was actually Wednesday at 6 in the morning. I'd booked a different flight under my middle name, which I'd never used, after Annalise helped me make a bank transfer from a workaround account my late wife had set up years ago for her sister's medical bills. There was just enough in it to cover a one-way ticket and a rental car. The Portland airport at 6 in the morning is mostly empty. I stood outside baggage claim in the rain, and I let myself feel it for 30 seconds. Just 30. I was home. I was alive. My grandfather's land was 40 miles south of me, and my daughter was somewhere in the city, probably still asleep next to a man who wanted my vineyard so badly he was willing to let his wife kill her father. Then I put it away, and I got in the rental car and I drove. I didn't go to the vineyard first. I went to a Holiday Inn off Interstate 5 in a town where nobody knew me, paid cash for 2 nights, and spent the morning on the lobby computer printing every email I'd ever exchanged with my daughter and her husband over the last 3 years. Then I drove to a Walgreens and bought a prepaid phone. Then I called the elder fraud attorney Annalise had given me. His name was Thaddeus McAllister. He was 68 years old, and he had a voice like gravel under a truck tire. His secretary tried to schedule me for the following week. I told her my daughter had tried to murder me in Portugal and was at this moment trying to take my family vineyard. There was a long pause. She told me to come in at 2 o'clock. His office was on the 11th floor of a building downtown. The waiting room had a brown leather couch that looked like it had been there since 1987. A young paralegal brought me coffee in a mug that said, "World's Showcase Grandpa." Thaddeus came out himself. He was a big man with a white beard and reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He led me to a conference room and shut the door, and he listened to me for an hour without writing a single thing down. When I finished, he said, "Where are the documents?" "I don't have them." "She has them." "All right. We'll find out what's been recorded with the county. That's where this lives or dies." He picked up his phone and called a county recorder he knew personally, and within 40 minutes we had it. A general durable power of attorney with springing authority, executed February of that year, granting my daughter complete control over all my property and financial decisions if a licensed physician declared me unable to manage my own affairs. Below it, a quitclaim deed transferring the vineyard property and the residence on it from my name into a revocable trust where my daughter was sole successor trustee. Both documents notarized. Both with my signature. But the kicker was a third document that hadn't been recorded yet, a medical incapacity declaration form. Pre-filled, awaiting only a doctor's signature. Thaddeus took off his reading glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Sir, your daughter was going to bring you home from Portugal in a confused state, walk you into a doctor friend of hers, get that incapacity form signed, and then activate the power of attorney. At that point, she controls everything. Your money, your medical decisions. The vineyard. You'd be in a memory care facility within 30 days, probably one her husband had financial interest in." I sat there in his conference room, and I thought about Beatrice, the old woman in Lisbon who had wrapped my father's watch in a tissue and prayed for me. What do we do? Thaddeus put his glasses back on. "First, we revoke the power of attorney with notarized statements today. Right now. Before she knows you're in the country. Then we record a notice of dispute on the trust transfer, which freezes any sale or refinance. Then we bring fraud claims. But, sir, listen to me. If what you're telling me about Portugal is true, we have something else here. We have attempted murder for financial gain. We have to handle this very, very carefully, or your daughter and her husband will smell it and run." I told him about Beatrice. I told him about Annalise. I told him I had a witness statement from the maid in Portugal that I'd faxed to the consulate before I left. Thaddeus smiled for the first time. It was a small, slow, dangerous smile. "Mister, I won't say my last name here, you understand." Then he said something I'll never forget. He said, "You are a more careful man than your daughter ever realized. Let's go to work." That afternoon, I revoked everything. By the end of the next day, Thaddeus had filed a notice of dispute on the trust, a fraud action against my daughter and her husband, and a request for an emergency hearing. He also brought in a private investigator named Cordy, a woman in her 50s with short silver hair and a face like a saint who didn't suffer fools. He told her to find out everything about my son-in-law's finances. Everything. Cordy called me 3 days later. We met at a diner halfway between Portland and the Vineyard. I'll never forget what she ordered. A grilled cheese with tomato and a black coffee. She slid a manila folder across the table and turned it so I could read. "Your son-in-law has been hiding losses for 2.5 years. He works at a small wealth management firm. He doesn't make what he says he makes. He took out a second mortgage on their house in 2023. He's been pulling on a margin account that he's now in serious trouble on. As of last week, he owes $1.2 million he cannot pay. There is a lawsuit from a former client that's about to break. There's another from a brokerage that's already been quietly filed. I looked at the spreadsheets. The numbers were neat little executions in a row. He can't even afford to keep his own house. They were going to lose everything. The Vineyard was the lifeline. Cordy nodded. There's more, sir. She showed me the search history Thaddeus's tech consultant had pulled from records. They were Google searches from my daughter's account over the past 4 months. Diminished capacity. Older adult. How to get power of attorney for elderly parent. Revocable trust transfer. Average payout life insurance. Accidental death. I looked at that last one for a long time. Average payout life insurance. Accidental death. I had a $2 million life insurance policy. It was old. I'd taken it out after my son died, in case anything ever happened to me, so my daughter would be set. She knew about it. She was the sole beneficiary. Cordy. The Lisbon trip. Was it ever about her wanting to spend time with me? She looked up from her grilled cheese. Sir, there's a bank transfer from her husband's account to a small private clinic in California for what looks like a sleep aid prescription. The dates match. I'd want a forensic toxicologist to look at the blood work from your hospital in Lisbon. It's a long shot, but I'd ask. I went home and I sat in my office at the Vineyard and I poured a glass of our 2019 Pinot and I let it sit on my tongue without swallowing for a long time. I could hear my grandfather's voice. He had a thick Italian accent he never lost. He used to say, La pazienza è amara, ma il suo frutto è dolce. Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. Here is what I want anyone watching this to understand. There is a moment in something like this when the human heart has to make a choice. You can collapse into your grief and let what your child did to you be the last word. Or you can stand up. I don't say that as a man who found it easy. I say that as a man who almost didn't make it. There were 3 nights in that little hotel, and that hospital, and on the flight home where I thought about ending things. I thought it would be simpler. I thought my daughter could have what she wanted. I thought my grandfather wouldn't blame me if I just let go. What pulled me back was Rennie, my granddaughter, 5 years old, with my wife's eyes and the laugh that sounded like a bell. If I died now, my daughter would raise that little girl, and that little girl would learn from her mother how to look at someone and decide they were no longer useful. I could not let that happen. So I lived, and I got methodical. The hearing was set for 6 weeks out. Thaddeus told me to do nothing in the meantime, to let my daughter believe I was still in Portugal. The hospital in Lisbon agreed to hold my official discharge paperwork for a week longer at Annalise's request. My daughter called the hospital 3 times that week asking when her father would be released. Each time they told her, in careful English, that the doctor wanted me to stay longer. She didn't fly back. She didn't even ask to. She stayed in Portland, and she planned my move into a memory care facility she'd been touring. Cordy got that on a recording from a phone call my daughter made to the facility's intake coordinator. She was on a list now. We had eyes on her bank accounts, with Thaddeus's careful and legal subpoenas. She was running out of money. Her husband's lawsuits were being filed publicly. They were 8 days from default on their second mortgage. I drove out to the Vineyard during that week. It was the first time I'd been on the property since before Lisbon. I parked at the gate and I walked the south rows myself, slowly with my cane. The new growth was just coming in. The leaves were that pale jade green that always looks like a promise. I sat under the old oak tree my grandfather had planted the same year he bought the land. I put my hand on the bark. I'm going to keep it, no. I'm going to keep it for you. I stayed there until sundown. Then I drove back to the hotel and I slept for 10 hours straight, the first real sleep I'd had since I'd hit the bottom of those stone steps. 2 weeks before the hearing, my daughter called me. She used the old number she had for me, which I hadn't changed because we'd wanted her to think I was still incapacitated. I let it ring. Then I let it go to voicemail. I listened to the message 4 times. Hi, Daddy. I just wanted to check in. I talked to the hospital and they said you might be coming home soon. I wanted to let you know that I've been getting things ready for you. Your room here at the house is all set. Rennie made you a card. I've also been talking with someone really nice at a place called Cedar Brook that I think you're really going to like. We'll go visit it together when you're back. I love you. Call me when you can. Cedar Brook. I looked it up. It was a memory care facility in Beaverton. I'd already had Cordy reach out to a former employee there. The intake coordinator had told my daughter she could begin the admission process as soon as the medical incapacity declaration was signed. The next morning I called my daughter back. I made my voice sound thin and tired. I called her honey. I told her I'd be flying home in a few days. I told her I was scared and confused and I needed her to be patient with me. I told her I didn't think I could manage the vineyard anymore. I told her I'd been thinking and I knew I needed help. I told her I trusted her completely, she cried. I'm telling you, she cried on the phone. My daughter, who'd stood at the top of those stairs and put her hand on my back, cried with what sounded like real tears and told me everything was going to be okay, that I didn't have to worry about anything, that she'd take care of me. When I hung up, I sat in the rental car in the parking lot of a Trader Joe's, and I shook for 20 minutes. Not from sadness, from a kind of cold rage I have never felt before in my life, and have never felt since. The day before the court hearing, Thaddeus called with one more piece of news. The toxicology team in Lisbon had finished their work on the blood work they'd taken from me on the day of the fall. There were trace amounts of Zopiclone in my system. A prescription sleep aid. I had never been prescribed it. I had never taken it. The amounts were consistent with a single dose given orally within an hour or two of the fall. She had drugged my coffee. Then she had walked me to the top of those stairs. That morning of the hearing, I drove to the vineyard, not to court. Cordy had called me. My daughter had been at the property the day before. The caretaker, who still answered to me, had let her in because she had a key. She'd gone into my study. She'd gone through my filing cabinet. She'd taken papers. The caretaker had photographed her doing it through the window. She'd also gone into the kitchen and opened a bottle of our 2019 Pinot. She'd left the glass on the counter half finished. I drove to the vineyard and I waited under the oak tree. Thaddeus was at the courthouse. He was getting an emergency restraining order signed by the judge based on the toxicology report. We had decided that I was not going to walk into that courtroom. I was going to be where she expected me to be, incapacitated. I was going to be home. She arrived at noon. She came through the wrought iron gate in a black SUV. She had her husband with her and the lawyer they'd hired, and she was carrying a folder. She was dressed in black like she was already in mourning. She didn't see me at first. I was sitting on the bench beneath the oak tree. I had a glass of the Pinot she'd opened the day before. I had the watch my father gave me on my wrist. I had Thaddeus on speakerphone, muted, listening. She walked up the path toward the house with her husband and her lawyer. She had a key in her hand. I stood up. Honey. She turned. Her face did this thing I will never forget as long as I live. It went through about 6 expressions in 2 seconds. Shock. Then a smile, automatic. The kind a person puts on before they remember they shouldn't. Then confusion. Then something that looked, just for a moment, like fear. Then she landed on a strange, bright, frantic happiness. Daddy! Oh my God! You're here! When did you get back? Why didn't you call me? I didn't move. I got back 2 months ago, sweetheart. The husband took half a step backward. The lawyer's face went smooth and watchful in the way lawyers' faces do when they realize the room has just changed. Daddy, what? I don't. I want you to know something before I say anything else. I want you to know that I love you. I have loved you every day of your life. I am still your father. Nothing changes that. Not even what you did. She was breathing fast now. Daddy, what are you talking about? I want you to know that there's a court order being delivered to your house in Portland right now. There's a restraining order. There are fraud charges. There is, as of this morning, an open attempted murder investigation in 2 countries. And I want you to know that I have a witness from the hotel in Lisbon. I have toxicology from your Zopiclone in my coffee. I have your search history. I have your bank records. I have everything. She started crying. Real tears. Her husband took another step back. Daddy, I don't know what they told you. Please, whatever you think happened, watch your step. She stopped. Sweetheart, watch your step. That's what you said to me at the top of those stairs in Lisbon, right before you put your hand on my back. Do you remember? She did remember. I could see it. Her face went still in a way I have only ever seen on one other face in my life, and that was on my son's face the morning we found him on the bathroom floor. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't move toward her. I sat back down on the bench under my grandfather's oak tree. I picked up my wineglass. You need to leave the property now. There's a sheriff at the gate. He's been there since 11. He let you in to see me at my request. He'll escort you off. She fell to her knees on the gravel path. She wailed. I have heard a lot of crying in my life. Funerals. Hospitals. The day my son died. I have never heard a sound like that. It came out of her like something being torn loose. Her husband stood there. Her lawyer was on his phone, talking fast and quiet. I drank the wine. I love my daughter. That's the part nobody understands when they hear stories like this. I loved her. I love her right now, sitting here telling you this. The love doesn't leave. That's part of what makes it so terrible. The love stays, and the trust dies, and you have to learn to live in the space between those two things. She was arrested at her home that night. Federal charges came 2 weeks later, when the toxicology report and the witness statement were formally filed. Her husband was arrested 4 days after her on his own charges. The brokerage suit against him broke that same week. He went from owing $1.2 million to owing closer to $2 million by the end of the month. The trial took 14 months. I won't drag you through every day of it. There were moments I want to forget. There was the day her lawyer suggested I had pushed myself down the stairs to frame her. There was the day they brought up my son's death and tried to suggest grief had made me unstable. There was the day Beatrice, the old maid from the hotel, flew in from Lisbon at the consulate's expense to testify. I wept when I saw her in the hallway. She held my face in both her hands, and she said in her broken English, "You alive? Good. God is good." My daughter took a plea in the end, 8 years for attempted homicide and elder financial fraud, with the possibility of parole at 5. Her husband took a separate plea. 6 years. They divorced from inside their respective facilities. Rennie went to live with her father's sister, a kind woman who had cried at the trial every day. I see Rennie twice a month. She knows her mother is in a place where she has to think about things she did. She doesn't know more than that. Not yet. Someday I will have to tell her. I think about it most nights. The vineyard is mine. It always was. The deed of trust was set aside. The fraudulent power of attorney was vacated. The 2024 harvest was one of the best we've had in a decade. I bottled a small reserve case from the South Block, and I labeled it Beatrice Reserve. I sent her 3 bottles in Lisbon. She wrote me back a letter in Portuguese that her grandson translated. She told me her son had been sober for 9 months. She told me she prayed for me every night. She told me to come visit when I was strong. I am strong now, mostly. The hip never came back all the way. I limp. I use the cane in the rainy months. The traumatic brain injury left me with a thing where I lose words sometimes in the middle of a sentence. But I run my vineyard. I read my contracts. I drink my wine. I sit under my grandfather's oak tree most evenings, and I watch the sun fall down behind the western ridge. People ask me if I'm happy. I tell them no. Happy isn't the right word. Happy was for before. The word I have now is steady. I am a steady man on land that is mine. I am a man whose granddaughter still calls him Pop on the phone every Sunday. I am a man who knows exactly who he is, in a way I didn't, before all of this. I don't hate my daughter. I don't speak to her. I haven't visited her in the facility she's in, and I don't intend to. Her lawyer sent me a letter 8 months in. She wanted to apologize. She wanted to tell me she loved me. I read the letter twice, and I burned it in the fireplace. Some apologies are only the next move in a long game. I am done playing. The lesson, if there is one, is this. Love your children with everything you have. Give them your heart. Give them your time, but do not give them your name on a piece of paper without a lawyer in the room who answers only to you. Do not sign things you have not read. Do not assume that the years you spent loving them have built a wall they cannot cross. Some people will cross any wall for the right price. Some of those people will be your own blood. If anything in this story sounded familiar, if you have a feeling in your gut about your own family right now, please listen to that feeling. It is not paranoia. It is your heart telling you what your mind is too kind to admit. Get a lawyer. Get a copy of every document with your name on it. Change your locks if you have to. Tell a trusted neighbor what's going on. You are not crazy. You are not being dramatic. You are being a person who deserves to live their life on their own terms. That's what my grandfather built that vineyard for, so the people who loved this land could stand on it as free people. I almost lost it. I almost lost everything. I came back, so can you. If this story moved you, please leave a comment about where you're watching from and what part stayed with you the most. I read them all, truly. And if you've been through something like this, you are not alone, and you are not weak, and you are not done. The next chapter is yours to write. I'll see you under the oak tree. I want to sit with you for a moment before I close this story, because I've thought a long time about what it actually taught me, and I don't want to hand you a slogan. Slogans don't survive what I survived. The first thing I learned is that nothing in this life happens by accident. Not the good, not the terrible. My daughter did not wake up one morning a stranger to me. She became one over years and 1,000 small choices I either didn't see or didn't want to see. Every time I let her cancel a visit without asking why, every time I noticed her husband's eyes counting the silver and told myself I was being unkind. Every paper I signed without reading because I trusted the hand that gave it to me. Those weren't nothing, those were stones, and one by one I laid the path she walked up to the top of those Lisbon stairs. I am not blaming myself for what she did. She made her own choice on that landing. But I am telling you, with the clearest voice I have left, that what she did to me was not a lightning strike. It was a harvest. She planted it. I watered it with my silence. We both reaped it. The second thing I learned is that being a good man is not enough. Goodness without wisdom is just a wallet left open on a park bench. I had spent 60 years being decent and generous and warm, and none of that protected me from a woman in a cream blouse with a hand on my back. What protected me was the cold half hour I spent in a hospital bed making a list. What protected me was Beatrice refusing to look away. What protected me was Thaddeus reading every page slowly. What protected me was Cordy checking the bank records. Goodness brought those people to me. But it was clear thinking, my own and theirs, that brought me home. The third thing I learned is that strength is not the absence of breaking. I broke. I broke on the flight home. I broke in the parking lot of a Trader Joe's. I broke when Beatrice held my face in Lisbon and said, "God is good." Strength is what you do the morning after you break. You get up, you drink your coffee, you drive to the next appointment, you sit down across from your lawyer, and you keep going, even when every cell in your body wants to lie down and let the world have its way with you. I was not strong because I never fell. I was strong because I kept getting up, and because I let other people help me up when my own legs wouldn't hold. If you take anything from what I told you, take this. Love your people fiercely, but watch them honestly. Read what you sign. Listen to the small voice that says something is wrong, and when life puts you at the bottom of a staircase, do not stay there. Get up slowly. Get up carefully, but get up. I'll see you under the oak tree.